Hello and welcome to another video by the Backup Chargers. This is Faceless Menace. Today we're going to be talking about a new deck tech video for Vow, another Sword Saints Vow deck. This time we're going to be using some Spectre cards from DTR. There's some pretty cool synergies in here, a lot of interesting things going on in the main deck. So without further ado, let's get started. To start off, we are running Spirit of Fire. This is a fire deck. That's the only way we can get access to all the craft cards and a lot of the new Specters that we want to run. Spirit of Fire specifically, you do need that extra hand size, so we're going to keep it the basic Spirit. Lurian level 1. This is the only champion we're going to be running, not going level 2 or 3. Main reason is you're just getting extra value from it. You need the class bonus, and I'd rather do Lurian than Jhin. We'll just put it that way. And then in terms of the rest of the material deck, it's pretty straightforward with 5 weapons, 5 non-weapons. The 5 weapons are Hwaji of Heaven's Rise. That's one we're going to get off of Lorraine. It's the only valid target in the deck, actually. That's going to be synergy for stuff like Sun Ce and Arthur. All of your warrior unique allies can swing with it. So it just gives extra damage. There's some other synergies down the line as well. We're also running Sword Saints Vow, obviously, since that's the name of the deck. This card is very good if you don't know too much about it. I know it's starting to get a little bit more popular after my last video on it. Almost certainly not because of that video. But it is a very strong card. People are starting to come around a little bit to it. The fact that you can get a lot of damage very quickly depending on your hand is definitely worth it in a lot of cases. Next up, we have Drawn Blade. This is the third, I like to call it, real sword in the deck. It can enable some turn 2 kills depending on if you have Blazing Throw, if you have Float and Grave, etc. Otherwise, the main use for it is to banish off of Clarent Reimagined, which of course means our 5th sword is Clarent Sword of Peace. The Clarent Reimagined is in there just to be able to grind out some of the more interesting matchups such as Fractals. It can help against Genbu technically, oftentimes doesn't though, but it's there just for those matchups. Helps against Arizona as well. As long as you're not going against an ally deck, this Clarent does help against that. Next up for the non-weapon regalia, we are running GCR. Again, you really just care about influence, same reason why we're running basic Spirit. So GCR is just the best version of that we can play. In addition to that, we are also running a Wind Resonance Bauble and a Water Resonance Bauble. That's here exclusively just for card draw again. The reason why we're not running the Fire Bauble is because we don't really need that extra influence into fire. You don't really have the off turn. You will still almost certainly run the GCR for whatever turn you're able to do that for, but the likelihood you need both is pretty rare, especially when you oftentimes just need to push damage hard. Speaking of pushing damage, we're running Smoke Bombs. Get over Taunt, get over Intercept. Pretty straightforward on that one. And Terrafring. Terrafring is here exclusively for other ally matchups, so you can kind of just win the tempo game, right? Because if you can win the tempo game, you're able to catch them off guard. They can't quite clear as many allies as they might want. They might not be able to push for lethal versus you can. So that's a pretty important distinction. Especially because this deck can get over the Terrafrings for its own tempo due to Sword Saints Vow. You know, if they're expecting you to swing in with all your allies on, if you have an Arthur, Spectre, etc., and they have their Terrafring and you happen to have the craft cards, you can just go Vow and go full kill that way. Next up, we're going to be talking about the main deck. That's all it for the material deck. Now on to the good stuff. So we're going to start with the 3 craft cards. This is still the exact same as last time, so we have 4 copies of Haunted by Fire, 4 copies of Temper and Flames, 4 copies of Tempered Steel. Tempered Steel is just generic float, gets a durability, can go for extra kill potential with Hwaji. Honed by Fire is fast speed, 2 cost. A sword gets +2 attack and gets a durability. This only works on swords, you can't use it on Hwaji, but using it on Vow is an extra 5 damage alone. If you use it on Drawn Blade, it's hitting for 3, which is still, a kill is a kill, right? And then for Tempered Flames, this is one that I'm starting to come around to more than Honed by Fire, shockingly, because you can use it on Hwaji early. This gives +1 target weapon, +1 attack for the turn, put a durability counter on it. It is slow, but it only costs 1. So you can do quite a lot on a turn with a Tempered Flames. So if you have Hwaji, you can use Tempered Flames, swing in with, let's say, this classic of Sunsei and an Arthur for a lot of damage right there. Because it's 3 durability, so the Sunsei, the Arthur I should say first, was swinging in for 2 base, plus the Hwaji of 1, plus the 1 from Temper, so that's 4, plus the 1 from Sunsei. So you're swinging in for 5 right there alone with the Arthur. Sunsei is also going to be swinging in for 5, and then Lorraine's going to be swinging in for 4. So that's 14 damage on board. Lorraine will only be swinging for 3, but you get the point. It's a lot of damage. Tempered Flames almost acts like a damage multiplier if you have the Hwaji in play, right? Next, we have 4 copies of Blazing Throw. This, again, just goes for kill. It can get over, let's say, a Frostborn Paladin with a buff counter. It can get over an Azen Protector. This 4 damage is a very important threshold to be able to hit. Sometimes I feel like I don't quite have as many weapons as I want to, but that's dependent on the matchup. If you have to use Clarence for eating the Drawn Blade, it can feel kind of bad sometimes, but you do what you gotta do, right? Then for our other float, we are playing Undying Dreams. This is a new one. It's a 2-cost fast speed. Target ally gets +1/+1 for the turn. If that ally's ephemeral, it gets a buff counter and generic flow. This can be used to protect an ally against another ally getting hit, which is a pretty good use case. Almost like a reprogram if they're hitting your ally. It can be used to buff one of your guys in the prereq and set up a little bit of float. It's not bad. I like it better than most of the other cards. The only reason it's in here for generic float as opposed to other things is because you do have synergies with another new card, Rile the Abyss. It's a 3-cost fast speed. Draw a card, discard up to 2 Spectre cards. For each card discarded this way, draw an additional card. So right off the bat, if you have nothing in hand to discard, this is pay 3 to draw a card, which is on par with a lot of stuff, and it's fast speed. So this is really solid right there. And then discarding 2 Spectre cards, and then drawing that many. Up to, I should say. That is pretty huge. It means it can be a +1 if you're pitching Undying Dreams. It lets you push for damage depending on which Spectre allies you're actually discarding. It does quite a lot of work for the deck. Then we have 3 copies of Creative Shock. We're doing kind of a 3-3 split with Rile and Creative. Main reason was we have some stuff that we want to be able to pitch that Rile the Abyss can't let us pitch. So having access to another way to get stuff in the grave is pretty important. And now for the allies. We are running 4 copies of Sunsei, as I said before. It's just very solid with Hwaji. Has synergy with both Clarent and Sword Saint's Vow. So it just helps out with some of the consistent damage that you want to get early. It's not really bad to see late. Seeing multiples can be a little rough, but you still need to see them often, so ran as 4 of. Same deal with Arthur, but Arthur is even more cracked in this list, and I'll kind of go over why once we hit the Spectre part of it. But 4 copies of Arthur, you just want to see it, right? Then we are running 4 copies of Red Hair. Red Hair was not in the previous list because I did not really want to run Zhao Chao as the only possible other enabler for Red Hair in addition to Arthur. Because running 4 Zhao Chao in a deck that can't really buff the Zhao Chao feels pretty bad in my opinion. Just not a fan of that kind of value engine there. But now that we have access to a new card that can enable it, I actually do like the Red Hair. So it is a 2-cost 3/3, which is above rate with Pride 3. As long as you have a Fire Element unique human ally, it gets it loses Pride and becomes a Hasty Messenger. So it just becomes very efficient for stats, especially with the Arthur. It is I have gotten off an attack with red hair for 6 more times than I should be able to. You know, red hair for 6, a statement for the deranged, right? And then we are still running, or we are running those 2 Xiao Chaos. I don't mind it as 2 of. I don't like going above that. It's more of a utility piece. Being a 2-cost 1/2 with stealth is useful. It's harder for your opponent to deal with it, so you should have something in play. You will not be able to be... You won't get the class bonus. You won't be able to not be retaliated against. But being able to keep your opponent off float or off of the on-death triggers for a lot of stuff is pretty important. And then lastly, for our unique allies, we are... for our fire unique allies, we're running March Hare. It's another new card here. It's a 1-cost 1/1 when it's banished from the grave for a reserve cost, so for a Kindle, essentially, it gets put into play. That's pretty big. Even just playing it as a 1-cost 1/1 is pretty substantial because that gives you access to some interesting kill lines with Arthur. Oftentimes in this list, you're kind of going down to, say, 4 or 5 influence, getting back up to 6 to start the turn. So hitting in for that last bit of damage after you play something else is pretty good. 6 influence is kind of where you can plot out some interesting kill lines. And then lastly, for unique allies, we're running 3 copies of Losser. Losser is another new unique ally. This is the only new one that can actually use Hwaji, though, which brings us up to a total of, 15 total allies in the deck that can use Hwaji, which makes it a lot more consistent than it was before. So it's a 3-cost 1/3, and on enter it gets +1 attack for the turn. Sorry, it gets plus X attack for the turn, where X is the number of other Spectre allies you control. It makes so your Spectre allies have stealth as long as they're awake. That last part doesn't really matter. You're oftentimes not doing that, but if you're under a Terror Frame, etc., that could come up, right? But for the most part, you're playing this as a way to either hit with Hwaji. 1/3 is kind of a weird stat line unless you have something in play. But you can chain it together with some other Spectres. We'll go over in a second. Actually, we'll go over those right now. So we have 4 copies of Incinerated Templar. This is probably the best Spectre in the deck. It leads to a lot of cool lines. It's a 3-cost 2/2, Cleric Warrior, class bonus. On enter, you put a Spectre ally with reserve cost 3 or less from grave onto the field. It becomes ephemeral, sack it at the beginning of the next end step. So this lets you bring back a Losser. So the Losser will be a 2/3 at that point. It lets you bring back a different card. We'll go over that one now, actually. Vengeful Paramour, to do extra damage to the opponent. This card is very cool. It's just a 2-cost 2/1. On enter as a spell. If it's ephemeral, deal 2 to target champion. You can ephemerate it, so you can play it for 4 from the grave. It becomes ephemeral, so you'll be able to get off that damage. Normally, if you just hard play it, it's a 2-cost 2/1, which is still fine. But if you can hit it off Templar, then Templar is a 3-cost 2/2 that gets a 2/1 and does 2. So, 3 cost for 6 damage. If you have Arthur, it's 3 cost for 8 damage, which is really good. You can also chain Templars. Doesn't come up often, but you can chain a Templar into another Templar if you want. And then use that last one to hit a Losser, for example. And now that Losser's hitting for 4. Plus the 3 Templars. If you had an Arthur beforehand as well, that's just probably game, right? It's a lot of damage you can push with Templar. For our last non-Spectre allies, we are looking at 3 copies of Hasty Messenger. It is Hasty Messenger. It's another card we can use to pitch things. You'll probably notice that we have a lot of stuff that wants to put things into grave, but it's not really impacted too much by Nullifying Lantern or Censor. We're still interested in removing those, but it's not backbreaking, right? And then we're running 4 copies of Dazzling Courtesan. One of those cards that makes it so that Lantern does affect it. This is our only Kindle card right now in the main deck. 3 cost 2/2, Kindle 3. Pretty straightforward. It triggers March Hare, which is the only reason it's in here, to be honest. It can push for extra damage, And then, yeah, it's pretty nice. It can chain together pretty nicely with Arthur. There's some extra synergies if you have multiple copies of Red Hair and multiple Dazzling Courtesans. Kind of same with Templar. Seeing multiples in this deck is 50-50 if you want it or don't. But it's pretty nice. I like the consistency. A lot of the DTR stuff is added to it. In terms of sideboard, we are running one material deck card here for now, which is Poisonous Apple. This is really good into any deck that wants a lot of stuff with float. So fire decks that want to go level 3. This is pretty solid because they want as much float as possible. So you're going to do a lot extra damage for nothing. Into water. Handing this into a Genbu is really sick. Being able to just punish them for playing the game is huge, right? Then we're running three copies of Deflecting Edge. Again, another thing for the aggro matchup, you just want to be able to kind of put them off tempo. Saving an ally is going to be really huge. 3 copies of Fiery Interference. This is for dealing with stuff like Luxem, where their healing might become a problem. This is a new one, so I'll actually go over this. It is a 2-cost, fast speed, cleric spell. It does 2 damage to target unit. If that unit is a champion, its controller can't recover until the end of turn. So this makes it so that you respond to the Luxem Xander reveal trigger with Fire Interference, and then all of a sudden they're stuck at their life total for the turn. They kind of have to waste the reveal trigger. It's really nice. It's really useful into Arisana as well. If they go to do a second, 3 visits, then you can stop them from recovering from that and do extra damage. You can respond to a Serene Spirit, potentially for lethal, and preventing it so they can't recover. So it has a lot of utility. It's pretty nice. It's not quite efficient enough to want to go main deck, but it does a lot of work. We're also doing 3 copies of Intensified Pyre. This is the other Kindle card that we have in the side deck this time. Just depends on what your matchups are looking like. 3 cost fast speed, Kindle 3 does 2 to target champion. If that champion's controller has 8 or more cards in their grave, deal 6 to that champion instead. This is doing quite a lot of work against, like I said, those fire decks, a lot of water decks. And it goes against slimes. It has a lot of utility here. The main thing is you can't always guarantee that it's going to hit for 6. So that's why I kind of have it just in sideboard. And then if you're in one of those matchups where it's relevant, you can bring it in, and it should be pretty good. And lastly, just 3 copies of Reduced to Ash. It's Reduced to Ash. You do it for Lantern, etc. It can hit a Terrafring on the opponent's end step, which is pretty nice. There's a lot of utility with it. The sideboard is kind of the most thrown together thing. I don't think you necessarily need quite a lot of it. I would love to find room for Staggering Strike or some kind of a Blazing Lunge. But it feels very tight right now, and the deck is I was trying Excalibur, etc., but it's hard to make that work. But that's it for Val. We got the Spectre package, we have a nice little Hwaji package, and we have all of the craft cards for hitting with the Vow, / buffing Hwaji, / keeping Clarent alive. I'll be doing a gameplay video this week as well. I'm going to be posting that in a couple days, most likely on Friday. So look forward to that. Please leave a like and subscribe. Comment if you have any questions or just want to kind of pick my brains about the deck. And thank you for watching.